Hey guys, Wolf here. TCL starting this year, beginning of the year. I'm excited. Today will be the draft analysis for the Terminus League. Um, Basically, I'm going to go over the format's going to go over. I'm going to go over the pre-draft strategy. We're going to cut and go to getting a quick lineup on all the picks, and then I'm going to go through each individual pick and tell you why I picked what I did. So, pre-draft strategy. Um, the lineup actually changed just before the draft started. It didn't actually affect my strategy any though. I started out fourth in the OU lineup uh, when they re-randomized it just before the draft because some people's picks were kind of wonky. Um, I ended up being second in the lineup instead of fourth, so it actually worked out kind of in my favor as I could pick something really strong early on, and then as everything gets starting to pick, I get to see where everybody's picks end up, and then I can have two almost back-to-back picks to finalize my core, get my OU set up, and kind of start picking power picks that counter everybody else's. So I was definitely excited for that. It fit really well with my game plan. Basically, my game plan for drafting um, is pretty consistent depending on position of the first OU pick. I usually rely on like the first 5 or 6 picks that I consider top picks for OU. Um, if I'm going early on in the draft, I'll go for power picks and I'll pick one of those up and then I'll just try and draft around it. If I'm going later in the draft, I like to build more synergistic cores, uh, like I did in the EGL, picking Mega Sizer and Politoed to kind of cancel out that one fire weakness. That's an example of a core pick that you can get on the wheel around. But not this time. This time's going for power picks. We're doing nothing complicated. I didn't want to risk doing anything, being as this is a higher profile league for the TCL, you know, the official league of the PokeTube Reddit page. So I didn't want to go anything fancy. I just wanted to get down and dirty with some good old fashioned beatdown picks. So that was my game plan, and I think I did very well. So let's get started and look at the picks. Before we get started in the actual individual picks, let's go over the team. We got, starting in OU, Mega Venusaur, Latias, and Tornadus Therian. In the UU tier, we have Infernape, Mamoswine, and Vaporeon. In the RU tier, we have Electros, Scrafty, and Registeel. And in the NU tier, we have Dusknoir, Rhydon, and Rotom Fan. So, my pick one, as we went over, was Mega Venusaur. The reason why I picked it over picking something like Manphy or Clefable is because A, it handles Manphy and Clefable, which is kind of nice because if you're not drafting those two, you need to have an answer to those two. Um, the other major reason why I picked that over something like Mega Charizard X is because it's probably one of the bulkiest things in League. Um, Mega Aggron's probably the only other Mega that's bulky enough to kind of compete for that slot. So having something that was bulky that can switch into just about anything, has access to reliable recovery with synthesis. I mean, it's basically overall the best pick you can make. It's only got two weaknesses because of thick fat. It's just so solid of a pick. It's easily my top three mega, if not the best mega of the format. Now that Mega Metagross is banned in most leagues, anyways. So definitely not ashamed to pick Mega Venusaur here. My second pick, basically, the way it turned out was because I had an early pick, of course, and you snake around in most draft formats, including this one. It allowed me to watch the draft, uh, which fit my playstyle a little bit better because I could see what people were picking and adapt to it. Now, one thing I noticed is just in the first couple rounds of draft leading into my second pick, people again picked preference picks over uh, objectively more powerful picks. Um, I think Dan from the TCL, he picked Sylveon over Clefable. I think it was Dan. If it's not, I'm sorry. um, Picked Sylveon over Clefable, which I thought was insane. I would never consider picking like that. But again, it comes down to personal preference. If you're better with Sylveon than you are with Clefable, then by all means, you need to pick Sylveon. Um, but it leaves Clefable for somebody else, which I guess would be nice if it was me. But we pretty much figured. not going to come back to me all the way on the second round, and it didn't. So things like that I noticed. First pick right before Mega Venusaur was Mega Gyarados. I would never consider Mega Gyarados being something that you could first pick in the very first pick, or the first pick of the first round of OU. I, if somebody told me, like, made a bet for that, I would never ever call that. But again, personal preference. Mega Gyarados isn't bad as a Mega. It's certainly fine. It's got Dragon Dance. Very good setup sweeper. It's well positioned in League. It's just not what I would think. I mean, who would pick Mega Gyarados over Mega Charizard X? 95% of people probably would pick Mega Charizard X first. But personal preference dictates that you need to pick what you're good with, or what you like, even. So, definitely not hating on anybody in the league, anybody you might be watching. I'm not trying to hate you. I think your picks are viable. They're perfectly fine. They're just personal picks, and that's just really what it boils down to. So, second pick, I needed something powerful that was coming around that people weren't picking, and it happened to be Latias, which is exceptionally good with Mega Venusaur. Latios was taken, which I thought was interesting. That was another signal that a lot of people were drafting really offensive powerhouses. Kiram Black picked in first round, Megaladios picked in first round over Megaladias, which a lot of people consider better because of Healing Wish. Um, it just it led me to believe that a lot of people were picking like either hyper offense or very offensively balanced teams. That set me up to basically draft bulky offense or bulky balanced teams and capitalize on that. So that was what my game plan was shifting to. Um, so my second pick was Latias. Uh, Obviously, we know it's an offensive defog user. It's one of the best offensive defog users, as I've said in my league strategy videos. The main additional benefit it has with this particular team of Mega Venusaur and Latias is that Healing Wish benefits Mega Venusaur a ton. Mega Venusaur's primary weakness is status and not being able to reliably recover with Synthesis if it's, say, for instance, burned by Scald or something like that. So getting that Healing Wish off for another go around on it does so much work because Mega Venusaur is very good at wearing down threats on the opponent's team. You use most of they might sack one or two things to try and get it really low. Then you just switch it out, Healing Wish it back up, and all of a sudden now they have to sack another one or two things to get it low. So that type of idea is what I was going into with Latias. Plus, it's a Lottie, top 5 pick of all time, and it came back around to me on the second draft. So yoink, it's mine. Um, third round pick of OU was a little bit more complicated. Not by much, though, realistically. Couple major picks I could make. I could make Keldeo, but being that my only real weaknesses for Mega Venusaur right now are Flying and Psychic, I didn't want to kind of pick something in OU weak to Flying. I really wanted something that could kind of stand on its own and kind of do whatever I needed to do. Having something with U-turn, like Sizer would have been a plus, but somebody picked Mega Sizer, which locked out the original one. So I basically looked at like what U-turners were available as it was getting closer to my pick, and I started to realize that not all the genies were picked. People picked Landorus T, people picked Thunderous I, but they didn't pick Tornadus Therian. So I snagged that up as quick as I could. It's a very good bulky U-turner, very good with Heat Wave. Uh, Hurricane's a little iffy because of the 70% accuracy, but it's very tanky with Regenerator, very tanky with Assault Vest too. Even electric type moves have a hard time damaging it. And the fact that it ignores rocks pretty much thanks to Regenerator makes it a flying type I'm not unhappy to draft. So definitely pick Tornadus Therian here. I don't regret this pick at all, even though it doesn't have a lot of synergy with the team because it gives me access to drafting a Volt turn strategy. I definitely wanted electric type somewhere in the draft, and most electric types have Volt Switch. So being able to have a Volt turn core with Mega Venusaur as my bulky switch in, primo, can't complain. So going into UU, my game plan basically revolved around two things: getting a bulky water and getting a ground type for stealth rocks. UU has the best of the best for both of those in terms of stealth rock users and bulky waters and Suicune or Melodic and stuff like that. If I could get Zapdos, I would snag Zapdos early too, but I mean, even though it doesn't fit either one of those principles, it's probably the best electric type in League right now, aside from Raikou. So below OU, it is the best electric type. The problem is that very first pick in UU, somebody picked Zapdos. Very second pick in UU, somebody picked Suicune. So I was getting a little nervous going into my picks because my picks after OU were all really late in the first round, like after sixth or seventh pick for all of them. So uh, it definitely made me a little concerned, especially since Melodic was picked a little bit later in round two. But overall, I stuck to my game plan. Uh, and I mean, I didn't want to divert from it too much. I really wanted to get this bulky offensive plan going because a lot of people were fighting over these really hyper offense picks, um, not really going for a lot of balance picks. And the balance picks they were making were easily exploited. Things like Ferrothorn or Heatran, where they have the four times weaknesses, so they don't perform as well as people think in defensive cores. Um, so my first pick was basically, do I want a ground type or do I want a stealth rock user? Or I'm sorry, or do I want a bulky water? And I voted to go with neither, actually. I went with Infernape. My logic for this was okay, Infernape is probably one of the most versatile Pokemon in League, and also one of the probably the most versatile fire type in League. Um, Gets access to a ton of different moves. It can run offensively mixed. It can run either side of the spectrum. It's very fast. Has access to priority on both sides of the spectrum with Mach Punch and Vacuum Wave. Has access to Stealth Rock even. It has access to Endeavor plus priority, which is just silly with Focus Sash. You can run a Focus Sash Stealth Rock set with Endeavor and just run priority all day long. And you can generally take out one, if not two things outright. So I definitely didn't have a problem with that because I was almost at the end of the first round, which meant that the snake going around meant I could definitely get another ground type really easily. Both Nidos were still available, and Mamoswine was still available. And with everybody picking personal preference picks, I was 100% confident I was still going to get a ground type that I wanted because I'm fine with either of those three that I mentioned. I really just needed one of them, and I didn't really care which one. So I picked Infernape first, and sure enough, Mamoswine actually came around to me for the second pick in UU, so I picked Mamoswine. The reason why I picked Mamoswine over the Nidos are basically twofold. One, it's not a poison type. Mega Venusaur is weak to Psychic. Obviously, I didn't want another poison type weak to Psychic this soon in the draft, so that was a detriment to picking against the Nidos. Or that was a detriment to picking the Nidos. Um, the next, obviously, reason why I picked Mamoswine is an ice type. Obviously, you want to have an ice type uh, in your league if possible because of all the dragons that are around, which I've mentioned in my strategy series as well. Mamoswine has access to Stealth Rock, has access to priority ice moves, has access to Choice Banded Icicle Crash, which does a huge number on ice type or on dragon types. I knew a lot of dragon types were going to get picked. Not only did the people resistant to ice like Kyurem Black and Charizard X get picked, but also things like Hydreigon, Salamence, things like that. So definitely not a bad thing. It also hits Zapdos. It's a great counter to Zapdos. Even though Zapdos has Heat Wave, Mamoswine is gonna kick the crap out of that with Icicle Crash. So definitely not sad to get Mamoswine here. It was pretty much the perfect ground type that I wanted, and I definitely was happy with it. Now that left me with a problem. I really wanted a bulky water. The only other problem is I really need an electric type too. And Heliolisk in the UU tier is a very good electric type. It's like a better Jolteon in every way. A little bit faster, I think. A little bit more. I think a little bit less in the special attack, but a little bit faster. It gets access to dry skin though. That's huge. Being able to absorb scalds is just primo, especially for an electric type, because Suicune was picked early, and probably the perfect Suicune counter is Heliolisk because it absorbs scalds. So it was heavily debated to pick Heliolisk over a bulky water here, but I ended up picking Vaporeon. I wanted to pick Melodic or Suicune. Both of those were taken. Vaporeon, however, is far and above way better than the other bulky waters that are in like RU, like Alomomola and stuff like that. So I definitely didn't want to rely on some of those later on. I wanted to get a very high quality bulky water now for things like spamming Scalds and getting those wish passes on Mega Venusaur, getting those wish passes on a lot of my other bulky threats, things like Mamoswine and Infernape. Even Latias loves wish passing, even though it has recover. I mean, wish pass just gives a ton of utility, and it'll be able to benefit my team later on, especially being bulky offense. Bulky offense loves cleric support, so being able to get something with heal bell and wish and scalds and stuff like that, definitely not a bad thing. So went with Vaporeon, locked that in, and that pretty much locked me into bulky offense or bulky balance from this point on, which I wasn't, unhappy about like in any mean, because just about everybody was drafting hyper offense at this point. I think one person was drafting kind of a balancy stall team because he picked Mega Sableye. Um, not sure if he picked Skarmory with it or not. I don't think so, but uh, there was some stall going on out there, but for the most part, it was all very offensive, and I wanted to capitalize again on it with my bulky team. So, are you now? I went with my gut in passing Heliolisk and going to RU for my electric type, but I could not pass an electric type past round one of the RU pick. So it came down to whether or not I would get one because they're both high quality picks in Electros and Jolteon. I was a little nervous because Jolteon was picked before Electros, which I thought was surprising because it actually led to me getting Electros as my uh, seventh pick, and I was super stoked about that. I think Jolteon over Electros is probably a wrong pick to whoever picked that. I think they underestimated how much Electros just does for a team. It has all the versatility in the world. It can do just about everything in terms of knockoffs, slow volt switches, which is nice with my fast U-turner. Has access to assault vest sets. It's a very good assault vest user. No weaknesses, barring mold breaker because of levitate being a pure electric type. So it's extremely hard to kill and extremely good at staying alive. It has things like drain punch, stuff like that to stay alive. Again, exceptionally versatile. I can run mixed sets on that as well, um, which you'll see going through my team. Just about everything can run like 3 possible sets or more. So it's going to be extremely hard for my opponents to try and predict what I'm going to bring because, for the most part, it's going to be almost impossible. There's going to be something different every week, I can almost assure you. So, picked up Electros, which I was extremely happy about. Um, I you can't really go wrong with it. It's probably, arguably, the best RU pick in league. It just is because of how versatile and bulky it is. Ryan of the EGL, he drops everything he can to pick up that in RU, and I don't blame him. I'm on the same ship he is. It's that good. So I was happy to pick it up. Going into my next two picks, I really wanted like a rock type. Like I needed a rock type. I needed something that could switch into flying type moves effectively. Mega Venusaur obviously being weak to it. Um, the problem is I really wanted Rhyperior, and Rhyperior was taken, and that was a big that was a big weakness in my draft strategy is the fact that it was still a little bit vulnerable to being sniped. So, um, it, on the other hand, even though I didn't get a rock type to resist flying, there is steel types available as well. Things like the regular Aggron, because Mega Aggron wasn't picked, um, and everybody picked a Mega at this point, so I didn't have to worry too much about Mega Aggron locking me out of the regular version. So I had that. Registeel was available as well, so I had some options to resist, and I still had a Rhydon and NU if I wanted to. So I kind of abandoned that for my second pick, and I just went for something that covered some of my other weaknesses. Uh, a lot of people were picking Psychic types, so I needed something that resisted Psychic coming in other than Latios, uh, and could effectively scare those away. And my pick for pick 8 was Scrafty. Scrafty, again, versatility. 3 abilities, and every ability is very good. Intimidate, obviously, is a bulky physical defense. Has shed skin. It can run a special defense EVs and run bulk up with shed skin and like a Chesto rest set. It can run Moxie. It can run a Dragon Dance Moxie set, which just slaughters everything. It gets stab knockoffs, gets drain punch, high jump kick. Lots of versatile moves. Lots of versatile move sets, I should say, and a lot of different adaptable ways to play him, which I thought was really nice, especially since he fit perfectly with my game plan of basically drafting things that resist Mega Venusaur's weaknesses. So I was really happy with Scrafty. I expect Scrafty to do a ton of work on my team. Uh, Third pick, I ended up picking the Registeel that I mentioned earlier. I picked him over Aggron because pure steel typing gives him a little bit less weaknesses. He has pretty much the same type of move pool with Thunder Wave, Stealth Rocks, Curse, and a lot of the other standard move sets. The only real difference is again the typing. He uses better typing overall, a little bit better bulk, I think, because he doesn't have those weaknesses to things like Scald and stuff like that. So I wasn't unhappy to pick him. He wasn't my perfect pick. I would have loved Rhyperior, but uh, obviously you can't get everything that you want in League. So I settled and kind of, I don't know, I compromised, we'll say, with Registeel. Now, going into NU. NUs are my niche picks, I should say. Basically, my team is built. Most teams are built by the end of RU. Really, it's just a matter of what like little picks here and there can I pick to kind of cover any huge weakness I might have, or what hoses my opponent's team. Uh, Things like picking a Will-O-Wisp user when my opponents have a lot of physical threats, which they just happen to do in the league so far. So um, picking up stuff like that, picking up a type you don't have yet, things like Rhydon, you know, that I don't have a rock type yet. That was on my list. Uh, and then having a flying type other than Tornus Therian. Oof. Because obviously Hurricane's only a 70% accuracy, so I needed a flying type in reserve that was a little bit better accuracy if I needed it. So those were my 3 game plans. I was getting a Will-O-Wisp user, getting a flying type user, and getting Rhydon. That was my game plan. So first pick, I picked Dusknoir. The reason why I picked Dusknoir over Dusclops, because Dusclops has a Violite and is a little bit bulkier, is twofold. One, Dusknoir has actually pretty good attack, has a base 100 attack stat, which makes it very good for things like shadow sneaking, shadow punches. Still gets the same move pool as Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split, stuff like that. The advantage of not having to worry about being just set up fodder and being able to go on the offense is really nice. Definitely not something I can kind of ignore. The other major reason is I actually kind of hate ghost type Eviolite users because of their weakness to knockoff. Um, Knockoff does a ton of damage to Eviolite users that are weak to dark. Things like ghost types or, Metang. Uh, Metang Eviolite, while bulky with other things, is just not bulky enough to knock off. It just gets obliterated by knockoff. So I wanted to avoid that if at all possible. So I went with Dusknoir. Certainly not unhappy with it. It gave me my Will-O-Wisp support. Gave me what I needed for spin blocking if I needed to spin block, stuff like that. So I was happy with that. My second pick, because my strategy was either getting Rhydon or a flying type, I went with the more selective pick next in Rhydon, uh, just because there's only one Rhydon and there's a ton of flying types. So I was happy with that. Evilia Rhydon actually does so much bulk, especially on the physical side. Uh, Now with the TCL's rule set, uh, I already knew ahead of time that there were going to be two different people with Charizard forms as their Mega because they allowed multiple forms to multiple people. So I knew Charizard X and Charizard Y were both on the field, and I had to have an answer to both of them. And a Rock type does that fantastically. Rhydon actually tanks Charizard X's moves very well, a lot more than people give it credit for. So it's definitely needs to be on my opponent's radar. It makes them kind of a little bit wary about setting up with either of those, just because Rhydon can do a number on those. Even though Charizard Y, yes, has Solar Beam, um, I can switch into that with Mega Venusaur or Tenacious Therian, uh, and just be able to tank those very well. So I'm not too worried about that stuff. I really wanted a Rock type though, and I was really happy to pick up Rhydon. Now, my last pick, I had a lot of options, but I settled on Rotom Fan. The reason why is more support. He gets Thunder Wave and Will-O-Wisp. He's a flying type. Being able to pair flinch somebody is always a plus, especially as a flying type, because you'll have Air Slash and Thunder Wave, which is kind of stupid, and I don't really like that strategy. In fact, I really hate it. But uh, as my opponents have shown in the EGO, when I've lost to it twice now out of like 7 games, like twice in 2 games I lost just because of that strategy, because of Jirachi and Rotom Fan. You have to acknowledge the fact that it exists and it is in the game, and if I need to have that option, I have that option available. So while I probably won't use that option, the fact that it's there is going to make my opponents respect it, and I think that's important. The other major thing is another volt switch user, which is always a plus. This one's a little bit faster, so that way if I need an electric type with a little bit more speed to outspeed faster water types or faster flying types, I have that available. So that was pretty much the only real reason for getting Rotom Fan over something like regular Rotom or something like that. So that's the team. I hope you guys like the team. I love the team. I'm very excited to play with this team. Um, Overall, there's a couple picks, like I said, that I would have liked more. Things like Rhyperior, Zapdos, Suicune or Melodic, things like that. That would have made my draft just way over the top. But I do feel really confident about this draft. I think this draft is on point, and I think my opponents. I haven't seen my opponents talk about it yet, which makes me think that either they haven't really been paying attention to it or they haven't looked at it enough to realize exactly how much of a problem it's going to be. There's a ton of defensive cores, a ton of defensive synergy with a bulky offense team like this, and it's going to make my opponents very, very frustrated at how hard it is a lot of these things are going to be to kill. So I'm excited to be able to use my versatility picks. Just about, like I said, just about everything on my team has like two, three, 4 different ways to build. Or more. So it's going to be really difficult for my opponents to not be caught off guard by the type of sets that I bring because as people in the EGL have learned, I bring absolutely insane sets sometimes that just catch them way off guard. And I think the TCL is going to end up the same way. I'm going to be bringing a lot of sets people don't really appreciate enough. Uh, and coupled with the bulk and the amount of raw stats that I have, it's going to do a ton of work. So I'm happy with it. I hope you guys are happy with it. Make sure to leave a comment below if you like or don't like the picks and what you think could have been different. I'll also have a link down below with the spreadsheet for everybody's picks so you can see what other people have picked and what you think like how my team looks compared to everybody else's. Otherwise, uh, I very much look forward to seeing you guys on January 9th when we have week 1 We're playing Grant, aka Based. Uh, from what I hear, he's one of the hardest opponents or the most skilled opponents in the league. So we're going to be starting this league off with a bang. So I'm excited. So I will see you guys January 9th for week 1.